your browser until you see 100%. It'll say 100% will have a tick. Only then should you leave, because that means it's fully uploaded. So it'll depend on our connection. So your connection, if it's good, it should be okay. So because I don't know, can you see the bottom right, or only I can see that? There's how many megabytes and stuff.
I cannot see how many megabytes it is.
Okay, I can see that. Okay, I can.
Recording.
Fine, no worries. So no problem. Don't worry. Just at the end, don't leave straight away. Let it go to 100%.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, I can see what you mean about the quality dropping sometimes, but I can still hear you very well though, so it's fine. Okay, yep. Cool. Right, what I'll do is I'll just start, if that's all right with you, and then we will crack on. So let me just remind myself, this is episode 23.
I have to always do that as well.
It's just they all blend into one. They all blend into one, mate.
It's very true.
23. Episode 23. Welcome back, guys, to a very special episode of Dentistry Invest podcast, episode number 23, all part of your plan your way to financial freedom month, your plan to financial freedom month for dentists. I'm taking it in a little bit of a different direction for this month because I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm talking to the financial gurus, they are so knowledgeable in their field, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. But I'm so conscious of the amount of jargon on the podcast, and I struggle to keep up as well. I feel my brain hurting, and I'm supposed to be the host, and I'm supposed to understand all these things. And I do get about 80-90% of them, but at the same time, on occasion, I do get a little bit lost. Never mind anybody who is maybe even less background in finance than me. So I wanted to... This was all inspired by a conversation that I had with someone who basically said the same thing back to me, and I'd already been thinking of it. I'd already been conscious of it already. So then I thought, okay, it can't just be, maybe it's just more than me then. The whole point about this page is to inspire dentists to be better with their money, and who better to ask than about planning your finances, planning side gigs, everything else outside of dentistry, than other dentists who have done it themselves. And when I thought about this, the first person that sprang to mind was one of the first people who got me on his podcast way back in the day. This is when I barely knew what a podcast was, by the way. I never listened to them. I literally never listened to them whatsoever. I'm very ingratiated to the guy. He has so much to say about being a dentist and about being, well, outside of dentistry as well. He is really super interesting. You've probably all heard of him already. His podcast has just hit 100,000 views as of yesterday, 100,000 listens as of yesterday, which I think is absolutely insane. Anyway, enough of me being his hype man. He's right here. He's in the flesh, virtually, of course. His name is Jaz Gulati. How are you?
I'm amazing, man. I'm really stoked to have this conversation today. I mean, I had you on the podcast about money, and that was such a successful podcast, James. You provided so much value in that, and it's great to be able to continue the conversation on your podcast today, which is doing so well, man. It's so great to see you build a community, and you're helping so many dentists, because as dentists, we are illiterate when it comes to finances, and I'm thinking you're making a huge difference in the UK and the world in terms of dentists becoming more financially literate and therefore making better life choices, retiring better. It sounds like really far away and stuff, retiring, but it's important. I mean, these are kind of the themes that we got to discuss.
Honestly, man, I actually just feel blessed, and I just feel lucky that it's got to the level that it has, and I didn't anticipate any of these things. I think it just came along at the right time, and you're quite right. It was some of the things I learned about money along the way that I just thought people need to hear this. This resonates with people. And then I learned things through creating the group myself, creating the podcast, and it just became this whole self-perpetuating thing. But you've been along this path as well, on a slightly different front, and still on the same, the symbiosis kind of parallel theme of educating people, but maybe just from a slightly different perspective, in that you focus on clinical dentistry. And I love your podcast. Honestly, I learned so much. The guys who come on those, I think I know about Emacs onlays, and then I hear someone who actually knows about Emacs onlays talk on the podcast, and it's real actionable stuff that I can just go in tomorrow and use in clinic. And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit about today, when further down the line. For anyone who's listening, you may have noticed, you will have noticed, that there is now a jingle at the start of the podcast. I've got this from Fiverr.com. I just thought it's about time I up my game, make this sound slightly more professional. So
Good
yeah,
man.
yeah, it sounds quite good. There was a few rough and ready edits before we got there. Maybe I'll release those just for the purposes of humor at some point. They weren't that great, but we did get there. I quite like the one. I quite like the one that they have. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on that. But anyway, less about me. I want to know about Jaz, and I'm sure everybody else does as well. Jaz, you are someone who has thought a little bit outside the box in term. The theme of this episode, the title of this episode is dental tunnel vision. Okay, teeth tunnel vision. Teeth tunnel vision is when we come out of uni and we focus solely on teeth because we think that that's pretty much all there is to life. And I've been this person. I've encountered others like this. I'm sure some who are listening, by their own admission, might say that they've been guilty of this. It's not a negative. It's just maybe a new perspective on life. You've thought a little bit outside the box. You've started your podcast. I know that you do a little bit of investing as well. Before we get on to that, I'd love to know your reasons why and what inspired you to look beyond what was immediately in front of you. But can we just hear a little bit about you for anybody who perhaps doesn't know you, who's listening, just so they can get to know you a little bit before we delve into things further?
Sure. So my name is Jaz Gulati. If you go way back, like I'm not going to speak 1 minute. I'm not going to bore you with my entire life story, but I'm a refugee. I came from as a refugee from Afghanistan. I was born in Afghanistan. I was 6 years old when I came to the country. My parents had nothing. I didn't speak any English. My parents still don't speak great English. My dad can't read or write. And when we came to a country and we claimed asylum and we got citizenship several years later, it was I'm so indebted to the British government. I honestly, I feel like the luckiest boy in the world because I see what's going on in Syria. I see what's going on with these children. All anyone needs is an opportunity and an education, right? So I was incredibly grateful to receive an opportunity and an education, and I felt though I had to do something with it because I was given this education. I'm not going to waste it. So I worked like a dog. I was very academic. I was very much like I need to study. I need to study. I need to study. I do regret in my earlier life watching too much TV. I guess is one of my regrets in life. But overall, as the years grew by, as I got wiser throughout A levels, I started to really work hard and study hard. In dental school, I was the first person to get 100% in clinical exams because I was I'm just a massive grafter. So that's just all about me. So the thing you said about having teeth tunnel vision, I think there's two sides to every coin because a lot of people would look at me and say, Jaz does have teeth tunnel vision because I'm always banging on about dentistry. And yes, there's that side to it. And I think for the first 5 years, like you said, there's nothing negative about that because I do feel to get your 10,000 hours, get your reps in, if you really, really want to be a great dentist as best as you can be, the best version of yourself, then if you really, really focus on, go on the courses, reflect on your work, take the photos, take the ups and the downs of dentistry, which is just a wonderful profession, it's going to take its toll on you, and sometimes you have to dedicate your entire life in a way to dentistry. And I did that. Okay, I did that 5 years or so, I'd say. It's a big part of my life at the moment, clinical dentistry. But as you said, I think there comes a time where we need to take a step back and look around us, because, and here's the number one reason, James, I think that every dentist should have a side hustle. Okay, and it just takes one complaint. If you love your clinical dentistry, no matter how good you are, it takes one spurious complaint to turn your world upside down. Okay, I've had lots of near misses in my career. Okay, nothing too bad, but when I've had those near misses, it's resulted in those sleepless nights, and it makes you think, right? It makes you think really hard, James, that you need to have a side hustle because if the proverbial hits the fan, what are you going to do?
Do you know, that is some real talk right there. And the trouble with one of the negatives of dentistry is you can be persecuted. Even, it doesn't even matter about the 99.999% of people that are thrilled. It's not an odds game. It's not an average. It's just that one person, and they really can make your life hell. And that is, yeah, that's sad, man. But it is true. It's a reality. And I think as well as that, just to add on what you're saying, coronavirus for me, when the tide goes out, you see the ships, the cracks on the ships, you know what I mean? And it just made me realize as well that I'm putting a lot of faith in any one thing. Not even just dentists. I just think a lot of, everyone should be diversified in the sense that they have more than one thing that they can do to generate money, a side gig or whatever as you put it. It's just it's a safer way to go through life. It's a safer way to go through life. It's a way that is you've got more of an insurance policy. Should for whatever, people lose their job, this happens, and if you have something on the side, as I say, you're a stronger person, you're more robust in that sense. But yes, side gigs, I'm all for them. I never really, if you would have known me about a year ago, I thought YouTube was stupid. I thought podcasts I didn't even know what a podcast was. I'm like a totally different person. And maybe now I see that, yes, okay, there's negativity on social media, but there is a lot of good stuff out there as well. You just have to know where to look. So, Jaz, when we were talking about teeth tunnel vision, I just wanted to know now, I know that you've just mentioned about you quite rightly said about complaints in dentistry and how it just takes that one patient, that one incident where you could even, worst case scenario, lose your career, very worst case scenario. Aside from that, was there anything else that made you feel like there was a call to action for you to expand your horizons and maybe think about doing a podcast? Or did it just start out a bit of fun and you didn't really envisage that it might end up where it is? I'm curious.
It wasn't complete fluke and an accident because when I went to Singapore.
Wasn't.
So I went to Singapore.
Did you say it was?
It was a complete fluke.
Okay.
It was a complete fluke.
Okay.
Right? And the way it turned out to be is me and my wife went to Singapore after doing our DCT2 in Sheffield. It was a great restorative post I did. And I was at that stage, 3 years qualified, where my portfolio was potentially strong enough because I was really into dentistry. I was really, documenting everything. It potentially was strong enough to get a private practice position, which I wanted. But I was going into the uncertain, going into the unknown, and I really didn't want to work in NHS practice. I think they do a great service, but it just wasn't for me. So I accepted that. So I thought, okay, should I just sit around several months potentially to find that unicorn position that may or may not turn up? Okay, is someone going to take a gamble on me or not? Or should I do something really cool, really different, and travel at the same time working? So I had someone in Singapore who I knew was working there, and she was enjoying herself, traveling a lot, working as a dentist. So I reached out to my friend Surinder, and I went to work in Singapore. So did my wife, who's also a dentist. She's a community dentist at the moment. She loves community dentistry, and we can talk about that later, about how in your household, whether you are or not married to a dentist, that's irrelevant, but how you should set up your life so that you're sort of doing slightly different things in a way. And we can talk about that later, but essentially moved to Singapore, had a lovely time there, and then my wife got homesick, so we came back, and then I was in a position to had a stronger portfolio, had some more years of experience, had some more failures in me, so I managed to get my private positions that I wanted, and I had massive imposter syndrome, James. Like I was like, even though this was everything I was working towards, even though I worked my arse off those last 5 years, I still felt like I wasn't good enough, right? And every dentist faces this, I think. Every dentist who cares, I think, faces this. So I had that. Now, when I came back, James, here's the interesting thing that happened. People on Facebook were talking about, oh, I want to move to Australia. Oh, I want to move to Singapore, in these big groups like For Dentists by Dentists. And anytime anyone mentioned Singapore, they'd always tag my name. And what happened is that every day as I was commuting back from work, I'd be on the phone to a different dentist answering the same questions. How much do you earn? Are there any language barriers? What's the working conditions like? What's the visa process? That kind of stuff, right? And eventually, after my 25th call, I thought, bloody hell, I wish there was a way to record this in audio format and send it to everyone. And hey presto, expat dentist from Singapore, I think the episode title number 1 was born. And from there, I just started to be myself, share the things I love, which is clinical dentistry, and sharing and building a community. And now I get messages on almost a daily basis. I'm so blessed that, wow, Jaz, the podcast is really making me a happier dentist. I'm feeling your passion is contagious. These kind of messages mean the world to me.
Amazing, man. Do you know what? It's so curious. The number of people that I talk to who have these entities, whether they be podcasts, Facebook groups, things like that, it's actually so uncommon that they start out, the genesis of the idea is what it is. It evolves through time and it becomes this completely different entity, and it blows up in all these different ways that you can't even imagine. I think the key take home message from that is just put yourself out there if you do want to do something like this. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily where you want to, what catches on or where it ends up. It's just about taking that first step, and that was totally true for me. And actually, interestingly, way back in the day, before I started Dentistry Invest, I actually tried to start a dentist cryptocurrency group, and I think that group blew up to the dizzying heights of about 20 members, of which it's still hovering. I need to kind of reignite that. I need to reignite that at some point. But I didn't quite get around to giving it the love and curation that it did deserve, because Dentistry Invest took off by itself. So yeah, super interesting. So Jaz, you've been on this journey. You've been on this journey a lot longer than I have, about the podcast, doing things outside of dentistry, what would you say the greatest benefits are to you? And those benefits may not necessarily be things that people would envisage from the outside looking in.
Okay, so it definitely leads to more opportunities. I've always, since I qualified 2013, I knew that I wanted to be involved in education. I just knew it, okay? It's something I've always had an affinity towards. I've always been told, even when I was 18, 19, 20, hey, Jaz, you're a good tutor. You're good at explaining things. You're good at breaking down complex things in a simple way. I've always been told that feedback. And I listened to that feedback and I thought, okay, how can I make that part of my future? And at the time when you're a student and you qualify, you think, okay, where is the pinnacle of dental education? And of course, you think being a dental tutor at dental school, right? Because that's what you're exposed to, right? You think, oh, if I make it as a dental hospital tutor, you made it there, right? And so I was thinking, okay, what do I need to do to be able to teach dental students in the future? So I did a PG cert in dental education, and then there's pros and cons doing that, but it did open my eyes a bit, and I started to really gear my career in a way towards being the best educator as possible as well. So that was also as a parallel going on. And so when the podcast came, it finally gave me an opportunity to get out of my shell and start sharing some of my knowledge, because I'm a massive course junkie, as many of you know. So I've got a lot of knowledge inside here and experience that I'm happy to share, and wonderful things have happened from me sharing. So you're completely right, James. Put yourself out there, whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be education. I'm sure, James. I think people find it very valuable if me and you just listed a couple of different ideas, make it really tangible. What could dentists be doing that's different? So, for example, I had someone reach out to me yesterday who'd done one of my online courses, and I found out that she works as a dentist 3 days a week, and she has a tuition business 2 days a week. So she is a tutor for English, math, science, that kind of stuff, I believe, like A level and GCSE. So that's wonderful. I know lots of dentists into property and have lots of rental incomes. Me and my wife, we have one rental income one rental property as well. So that's a great thing to do. Some dentists like to just invest in practices, which is fine. Others are day traders as well, and you know way more about that than I could ever get to know. So can you give us some examples, perhaps, James, of how can we make this episode tangible in terms of how to move away from the teeth and do other side gigs?
Cool. I think something that's really powerful, and maybe a lot of people don't realize, is say you have, okay, we all have this body of knowledge in dentistry. That's cool, right? We're all dentists. We all have spent our 5 years at university. But beyond that, if you know a little bit about something else, a little bit or a lot about something else, and this can be anything, this can be the most abstract thing, this can be gardening, this can be whatever, cars, etc., because you have that affinity or that brotherhood with those first set of people, the dentists, you'll be able to offer a unique slant on that which resonates with those people more than anybody ever else who can. And you'll be able to bring that information to those people with a slant that only a dentist can. And therefore, it becomes so much more valuable to those people than than anybody else who's doing it. So you have this amazing angle. You have this amazing ability to connect with these people that those people don't. And that's really valuable. And if you think about it, that's what the finance group is as well. I'm not a professional trader. I'm someone who's just read a lot of books on finance, read a lot of books on crypto, done it for a while, and I can, because I'm a dentist, I can bring that information to those people and give it to them in a fashion that's tailored to them, which makes it much more useful. I think that's my favorite one. That's my favorite thing that I've realized, Jaz, is that because a lot of people think that you have to be an expert on these things. It helps to know more, but even if you don't necessarily know that much, you'll be able to help all these people just by putting yourself out there and giving them that information in some shape or fashion, and all these amazing things will come of it. And the number of conversations and doors open to you, and friends that you'll make, it's not even necessarily have to be financial rewards. It's just an amazing new perspective on life. And that was the greatest thing I learned. I hope you
Big
like
time.
that.
I mean, the amount of friends and
that.
connections I've made from the podcast have been insane.
It's
absolutely insane. And it's really wonderful to connect with people from Austria, from Costa Rica, from Australia, and we're like Instagramming, DMing each other on a daily basis, and just sharing our love for dentistry. And that's what the podcast has become. But what I wanted to do, because when you told me the title of the podcast was "The Path to Financial Freedom," well, it's something that in a way I'm unqualified to talk about, because I'm very much early on in that path, but like you said, I've done my homework in the past. I spent a good 3 years becoming more literate in personal finance. Like I told you on the podcast when you came on, I accidentally listened to a Tony Robbins book, which I thought was about motivation in life, but turned out to be about money. And I was like, what the hell? What's an index fund, right? So then I started to learn about that now, starting to invest in that because I believe, and I told you also in that episode we recorded together, I think it was episode 35, was the FIRE movement, FIRE. The financially independent retire early. How everyone should be able to save enough money, invest it so that eventually, and this is like a 20, 25-year plan, you can have a nest egg to really rely on instead of just leaving it to chance. And that's something I really believe in and I follow along.
Yeah, 100%. And it comes back, the nest egg thing I like because it comes back to not putting all your eggs in one basket. And as we've already, you can start on picking holes in dentistry, which it's inherently fragile, and you can just there can just be that one incident that for whatever reason, like it happens. People can lose their license, so it's best to hedge your bets.
Or back problems, James, back problems, injuries, all that sort of stuff.
Lots of things. I saw a list the other day, right? 100 worst jobs for your health, and I thought, okay, dentistry's on there somewhere. All right, I thought, yeah, dentistry's definitely on. Maybe top 50, top 70.
It's number one, right? Surely.
Oh, you stole it from me. That was going to be my bombshell that I was going to drop at the end, Jazz. But it's okay. But yes, dentistry was number one. Dental technician was number two. And dental nurse was top 10 as well. And it was from the point of view of radiation, infectious disease, cross-infection,
toxicity,
hazardous materials, amalgam, blah, 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 all these things. But anyway, Jazz, I wanted to ask as well, I know that you balance this with dentistry, your podcast and your other commitments. How does that look? How does your week look for you? And just how much time does that take for anybody who's maybe not started a podcast? Is it a big time commitment? Is it a little? I really don't know.
Great question, James. So initially, when I was doing it all myself, and I think if you're starting to make content, if you want to do YouTube, if you want to do a podcast, if you want to start your own business and tuition business, whatever, like if you want to do something different and you want to get yourself out there, then you need a lot of time in the beginning, because 1 hour, and I'm sure it's the same with you, James, 1 hour of content would typically take about 5 hours in terms of putting it all together, getting the audio right, getting the images, writing the copy, making the website stuff so you can generate emails, that kind of stuff, right? So it takes 1 hour content, takes 5 hours behind the scenes, okay? Fast forward, 2 years now, I've got a team now which I can rely on, thankfully, which do this bit for me. So I can just focus on my family and focus on making content, which is what I love doing. Okay, I absolutely love talking about dentistry. I'm starting to do more reviews of dental products and stuff, but it's very time intensive at the beginning. But you asked a really good question. How does my week look like? Well, I want everyone who's listening today to do the following exercise. So if you're multitasking, listen up. You need to design your life. Stop getting dictated by everyone else. You need to sit down and design your life. How many hours you want to work a week? How much money do you want to earn in a year? How much money do you want to save a year? You need to have this conversation with your family member, with your significant other, and get decided. So I decided that I want to work in a practice where they have an 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift pattern, and maybe a 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. shift pattern. So I put that out to the universe, and eventually the universe spoke back at me and the opportunity came along. So by having that half a day, so I work from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m., like solid, it's like a 6-hour block, you get a 20-minute break in there. I love that model, James, because I can be a father, because I pick my son up from nursery and I can give my son some time. I can do some podcasting in the evening or making some content. I can just have a life outside of dentistry, but with that couple of hours that you shave off, doesn't make a massive difference in terms of income. It really doesn't. It just makes you more focused. So the only reason I'm able to do all these things is from the time generated by working as a shift pattern dentist. And that's the real secret, I think, I found to being able to make a side hustle work. Either cut down to 3 days a week or work many days a week, but work in a shift pattern. What do you think?
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, well, I used to be the guy. I actually used to work 2 jobs and I used to work 6 days. And it's almost like it's not it is the hours that you spend there, but it's also the time that you don't have, if that makes sense. So let me just explain that further. So what I mean by that is there's 7 days in a week. If you work 6 of those days, you only have 1 day to prepare for the rest of your week. Do you know what I mean? Okay, and maybe do all your other things as well. So from that point of view, I felt like maybe looking back on it, I was constrained in that I couldn't actually pursue these other interests that I might have had as much as I would have liked to. So from the point of view of reducing your hours, as you said, Jazz, past a certain point, money just becomes something that you kind of have for the sake of it. And particularly with dentists, none of us, it's very rare as a dentist who's struggling to put food on the table. Let's be real. And if you want to be the person who expands beyond dentistry, I think that you have to start looking at yourself and thinking, can I do less dentistry? Only if I don't need to. Only if you don't need to. But that's the first step for me. That is the first step. And it's all these, yes, it's going into the unknown, but you still have your foot in the game. So it's not like, you'll struggle. You've sat down and done your numbers, presumably. And that's the first step to getting out. Because if you're already working too many hours, you're never going to have the time to make that step and follow these other pursuits, whatever they might be. That would be my greatest lesson that
You don't have any time for the passion. You don't have any time to be creative. We need time. We need these silent hours away from the practice to be creative and get our creative juices flowing. And also, James, like, if you're just working more days, and the more successful you become, the more your patients like you, the more your patients refer other patients to you. And if you're not at a stage where patients are raving fans yet, then maybe you should be working on your clinical dentistry, because you want to get your clinical dentistry at a level where you can be competent, but you can also show warmth to your patients, and you're a likable dentist, so that you get more referrals from your patients. And then when you get busy enough so that you're looking ahead in the weeks and you're busy, then that's the optimum time to then take a step back, okay? Because the more you work at that stage, if your books are full, okay, the more you're just paying the tax man, right? So be tax efficient in a way by working less days, and then think about other ways to spend more time with your family, more time doing the gardening, which you love to do, more time doing things that you love to do, and then more time on a potential side hustle, which I strongly believe everyone should have, even if it's just getting into property and looking at which properties you should invest in. Like, anything you could think of, you can make happen.
Yeah, I should say as well, the group that I've created, there was 3 years of work before I got to that point, in essence, because I'd started learning about finance before, and I never really actually imagined that any of these things would happen. So it's the seeds that you plant today that germinate tomorrow and grow into, beautiful oak trees and things like that. And I know that sounds like waffly and whatever, but this is
very poetic, James.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. To creating anything like that, it has to start somewhere, and it isn't something that you mightn't see an immediate return on for a while, but at least it broadens your horizons and it makes you less committed to dentistry, which, as we've already fleshed out, there are some strong advantages to doing that. But yeah, it definitely is the long game, and it was the long game for me, and through most people that I've chatted to who've started whatever that might be, it's always been the long game. It's always taken them quite a while to get to where they are. Jazz, I wanted to ask as well, you said about obviously you love doing your podcast, and we spoke about the benefits a little bit. If anybody was listening and they were thinking about taking that first step, I know we've kind of covered this already, what would you concisely say to them to encourage them to go for it?
So, reasons why they should go for it, right?
Yeah, just long story short, summary, boom, boom, boom.
If you have a story, if you have a purpose, if you have something to share that's valuable to other people, no matter what niche it's in, go for it. Because you don't want to look back and think, oh, what if I had just done that? Because wonderful things will happen. If you've got someone who's got something to share, if you've got a story, if you've got a mission, I promise you, wonderful things will happen. So that's, go for it, I would say. You will not regret it. It does have to balance with the time. As I said, you need to make time for it, and you need to give it the love and the sun and the warmth and the water to allow that seed to germinate, as you said. But it can be very fruitful, very rewarding, even from just the connections you make, because your network is your net worth, and from that, beautiful things can grow.
I've never heard that before. Your network is your net worth. I'm taking notes. You know what? Jazz and I came to a revelation off camera. We both agreed this. Jazz is the Gary V of dentistry. I'm just throwing it out there. No, I'm joking. He didn't agree it himself. I proposed
That's
it.
the biggest compliment. That's the biggest compliment ever.
I proposed it, but now I'm seeing the parallels so much. The entrepreneurialism, the enthusiasm, all these things. What a great way to kick off your path to financial freedom month. And I know, okay, neither of us are technically financially free, But there's some lessons in there that we've learned both along the way that have meant that I'd like to both think that we're maybe progressing down that road, I suppose. Or
Well, we're taking the
we've
first
learned a
steps.
few
You've
things.
built this
Yeah.
wonderful community, and I've also been doing investing in ISAs and made myself literate, and I'm happy to sort of share some things. I mean, two things I wrote down as notes to add value to the people who listen to this podcast is two things I want to discuss. One is lifestyle creep. Are you familiar with that?
I recall you saying it. It's I don't want to take the wind out of your sails, but I'll let you speak on it. I think I know what it is.
It's there's nothing too magical about it. It's just basically as your income increases, because you remember as a student you had that $4,000 student loan, whatever, and you lived off beans on toast, and you were happy as Larry, right? And then you start having an income, and it's about 30 odd K, and then maybe you're getting more and more income. Then naturally, the lavish expenses start coming and stuff like that. But then that's really killing any savings you could make. So just be careful of lifestyle creep. As a dentist, we're in this wonderful profession, and part of the reasons that we're able to talk about the kind of stuff we're talking about today is it's one of those wonderful professions that if you wanted to work part-time, you could. Not anyone in any profession can do that. And I've got loads of friends in other industries who say, wow, Jaz, I can't believe that you can just work 3 days a week. And that is a possibility down the line. People are just amazed by that. So just be careful of lifestyle creep. Have a look. Are you starting to spend significantly more as your income increases? If so, then how are you supposed to save more? So it's really important to save more in terms of lifestyle creep. Before I raise the second point, is there anything you want to add to that, James?
I love that because you need to have money to to invest, to make money. And anecdotally, I friend of a friend got out of dental school. Thought to himself, I'm on an FD's wage now. I'll get a decent flat and I'll get a car and I'll pay it off on finance. Got out of, finished his FD year, got a new job. Things didn't really go to plan, didn't get along with his principal, left the job, and now he has this car and this house, and it's like a noose around his neck. He works however many days a week, 6 days a week, and I think he has about £100 left over at the end of the month. And he's having to do some real thinking. Outside the box as to how to get himself out of this predicament. So yeah, definitely a lesson to be learned in there somewhere. And it's about saving, isn't it? Where you can.
Absolutely. And have you covered the difference? I mean, you might have done already, but have you covered in your podcast yet the difference between an investor and a trader?
I feel like we've fleshed it out a few times, but I'd love to hear what you think about it, and maybe you can add some more insight to it, another perspective.
I'll just give you the Joe Blogs dentist, Dr Blogs dentist version in terms of this, right? Because based on our episode that we did on my podcast, the number one sort of query or question I came back, like these scenarios that dentists would pitch to me, like firstly they'd say, wow, I need to really educate myself about money. So you definitely brought that to the podcast. You really inspired dentists to think, okay, I need to start learning about money and how it works and how to save and how to invest. So the average dentist at the moment is unsure about how to invest. They maybe have a savings account that's accruing 0.2% a year or something like that. So your podcast episode really made them think. And then the most common thing I get is, okay, Jaz, I listened to your podcast with James. It was really good. I'm going to put £1,000 into an index fund. What do you think? Which one should I go for? I'm like, okay, that's great. Okay, but then what happens a few months later is that, hey, Jaz, I'm a little bit disappointed. That £1,000 investment I made, it's only got me £27, and it's been 4 months, and I'm a little bit concerned. Okay, so then we need to have this conversation with this dentist and many other dentists who are starting on this journey is that, okay, are you an investor or a trader? And I want you to do this because you'll do it so much better than I will. And then also, like, I'll give the example of my sister who also saw that I started to get into this stuff and she put £100 in trading 212 and she made £40, okay, after 3 months because she invested in some like light bulb company that she read about. And I told her, look, Simran, she's my sister, I said, you're just gambling, right? Just picking on one company and you're gambling. What's your strategy now? She's like, well, I've only made £40 in 3 months. This is rubbish. And I'm like, what the hell? You made 40% in 3 months. This is insane. This is amazing. This is phenomenal. So we need to fix our mindset about where we're going with this.
Two things I'll say on that. The first one is when you are going into any investment, it's really, really helpful to have an idea over what period of time you're expecting to draw profits. Okay? So if you're buying something and say you're looking to the very long run and you're saying, well, actually index funds over this amount of time, they almost always go up on value. You can sleep so well at night because no matter what it does day to day, you don't care because you believe in the long run that it will go up in value. Okay. So that is such a helpful way of looking at it. And that's such a healthy mindset to go into things. And alternatively, if you're buying something as a punt, for anybody who's listening, Dogecoin springs to mind, or GME, those are not things you want to hold long term, you know. So you kind of want to get in and out, and then you can make money. That's, you know, if you ride that up, you're probably going to ride it down again because it's such a short term investment. So if you have an idea of when you're going to get out, then that can mean that you're ever more likely to make money on that. And again, you won't lose sleep at night when it crashes down to zero. The other thing I was going to say, really, one of my favorite sayings about investing, you only have the resolve to trade your beliefs in the market, not the beliefs of others. Okay, so in case that isn't immediate, does that make sense? Even before I kind of describe what that means, Jaz, can you see where I might go with that?
Kind of, but I think someone who's not as read up and hasn't read a few books on this stuff, they might be like, make it tangible for me.
Fair enough. Allow me to explain. So what I mean by that is, when you read about any particular asset and you learn a lot about it, you'll learn about how it moves and over what period of time it's expected to increase in price. So you'll be able to put your money into that and you'll be able to say, well, actually, I don't care about the daily noise where it's going up and down. That's fine, because I think, like with gold, as long as inflation continues, I think gold is going to go up in value because gold is the benchmark of inflation. So that's my personal belief. So I can buy gold and I don't care if it goes down. It's not doing very well at the minute. I don't care if that happens. I think in the long run, it'll still go up until we figure out a way to get it from asteroids, which is a long way off. There's only going to be so much gold. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's my personal belief. So I can buy gold and I can sleep well at night. But if I tell you to buy gold and you think, oh, okay, I don't really trust this guy, but okay, I'll put some money into it. You know what I mean? And then gold doesn't do well for 6 months. You'll, one, be unhappy with me, and two, you'll probably take your money out, and then you'll miss the real train when it comes later. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, you only have the understanding. Yes, well, hopefully that fleshes out a little bit more what I was talking about. I hope that makes more sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and I love that. It's a really great belief system. It's a really great way to make it tangible, I think.
Best saying I ever heard about investing. Favorite saying.
I'm going to pitch something to you, my friend. I'm going to ask you something. Well, I don't have nothing to add to that in particular, but I've opened up my Trading 212 account. Okay, it's here on my phone right now. So I'm going to spend the next 3 minutes asking James, because to me, you are the expert, right? I know we're not giving financial advice and stuff, but I just want to know, what would you do? What would you do in this scenario, right? And I know you're going to ask me, what's my aim? What's my goal and stuff, right? So after being inspired by you and the group a little bit, so I'm primarily an investor, right? I do index funds, and I know I'm going to stick in there for about 30 years, okay? And I know I'll come out on top most likely, right? And I'm very much max out my ISA, so everything's tax-free. And these are just fundamental rules we should all be following, right? But then within my ISA, I put £2,000 into IAG, shares in IAG, okay? Which is like they own like British Airways and that kind of stuff, right? Because they had gone down. So let's see, I'm just bringing my chart up so I can make it tangible. In 1 year, they'd gone down 51% due to or about 70% due to the pandemic, right? So I bought it a few months ago when it was really low, and now it's gone up 36%. Nice. So my £2,000 is now almost £3,000, right?
Nice.
What should I do? Should I take out the profits and then maybe invest it into my index funds, because I know that's going to be there long run? Or because it's still, yet to reach the peak that it initially was, should I hold on?
I am the investor that will always say risk first, always. Okay? So what I mean by that is, when I buy, I don't really trade stocks so much day to day. I've got a few stocks. I've got Argo Blockchain. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a Bitcoin company, and I think that their price is tied to the fluctuations of Bitcoin. So I've personally invested in that because that's what I know about, and that's what I've been trading the most. It's all about picking one asset and just learning the absolute heck out of it. But that's an aside. So what I would do on that one, when I invest or when I trade in any crypto, I always say risk first, always. And even if I look at this and I think this is a gem, all right, unless everything I know is wrong, I think this is going to go up in value. Okay, I'm convinced that it will. Yeah. But you never quite know what is going to happen. So every trade that I get into, I always say to myself, What is the minimum that I can take out that when it hits a certain price target, that even if the thing totally goes against me and I lose money, that I'll have broken even. And then that way I've managed my risk every single time. So I think for me, with a trade like that, even though I don't particularly know much, was it IEG? Was that it? IEG?
IAG.
IAG. So that even displays how little I know about it. What I would do on that one is I would go anything that I trade, anything that I'm not investing in. So investing being things that I don't want to draw profit in the very, very long run. Anything that I'm trading, i.e. I'm looking to get in and out, I calculate at what price I will sell if I think the trade is going to go against me. So I'll look at the chart and I'll say, right, here's some support, here's some resistance, here's where I think the price could go. If it goes this far beneath it, I'm out. I don't care what happens, I'm out. Okay? So for whatever that price is, I calculate what is the first price target that I need to sell at, that no matter if this thing totally goes against me, I'll have broken even. And then once I've done that, I just siphon off profits as it keeps going up in value. And I basically just look at the chart and I put on these very hard limits. And that way my risk is always, always, always limited.
Brilliant. So sounds like I should draw some money out from this, but keep some in because I do have faith in it, because essentially it's British Airways, these airlines, and all the holidays getting booked and the confidence coming back up. And it is a way of mitigating my risk by drawing some of the money out and putting it into my sort of my allowance for the index fund, which I know I've got faith in over the next 30 years.
I believe so. Risk first always. Another thing that quite often happens is people will buy a stock or people will buy a crypto or whatever, and again it goes back to the theme of what I was saying earlier about having a plan before you get into it, because unless you have a tangible point at which something you are going to sell something and make money, then you can watch this thing go up and go straight back down again, and there is no point at which there's another saying on Wall Street, not to throw too many Wall Street sayings at you, but you're a sheep in investing until you take profit, and then you're a wolf. Does that make sense? So while your money is still in the trade, you're still a sheep. It can still go against you. You haven't actually got anything out of it until you take some money out. So I'm a huge fan of taking partial profits at certain levels, because no one knows what will happen. And then at that way, you've always paid yourself. Pay yourself for your hard work. Pay yourself for your diligence and your fortuitousness. Do you know what I mean? That's the way I look at it personally.
That's very good. And also reminds me of another saying that people generally, when we're investing, where we hold on to the losers for too long and we're hesitant to sell the winners, and that's a losing formula in a way, because we're looking at our losses and we're waiting for it to go up, so we just lose and lose and lose. And our winners, we're selling too soon. Is that right? Is that the way to think about it?
Yeah, I read a really interesting, I think it's almost 99% psychology, personally. So what you've just described is a psychological problem, because the market's actually given people who are in that position some money. They just have a barrier against taking it mentally. Really, not to go too much on a tangent, but really interesting book. Van Tharp's Trade Your Way to Financial Freedom. Okay, guy is a trading god. K. Van Tharp, trading god, been trading for however long, made millions, just enjoys teaching people now. 50 traders, he's interviewed 50 traders, okay? He wanted to find the essence of trading and making money in the markets. He wanted to know what it was, okay? 50 traders, they all had different systems. They all had 4 things in common. They all planned how much they put in as part of their trade. They all scouted the trade for a good entry. They took profits at certain levels, and also they sold their position if it got below a certain price. He wanted to know what, apart from those, what do their methods have in common? They all had totally different methods. They used different indicators, a million different ways of doing it. They were all successful. The 4 things they had in common, the things that they had in common were those 4 things, and their psychology was in check because they took profit. 50 traders, and they all made loads of money. So that's the holy grail, is that, basically, just to kind of train yourself to take your profits and sell when it goes against you. And it's just discipline. That's the thing. Just discipline.
Amazing. I'm going to sell a decent amount of those shares and put it into my index funds, and I'll go back to the set and forget mode, invest and forget, which is the way my personality suits me better that way rather than being a trader, to be honest with you. So my dabble worked. I got lucky, and I went in without a plan. But you're so right. You should go in with a plan, and I'm going to do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Jaz, just before we wrap up, because I know that you're on a bit of a time limit today, I know that you are someone who, well, you've just talked about how you do your investing. Can you just give us an idea of what you buy? What do you think are some helpful tips to those who are listening, who are maybe uninitiated in the world of investing, or even if they have got a bit of experience? What would you say to those people?
I would firstly say read up on index funds. Two books I can recommend is the one by Tony Robbins, which is Unshakable, I believe, and the other one by J.L. Collins is The Simple Path to Wealth. And they break out very much. I took my philosophy from those books in terms about putting money aside every month, maxing out your tax-free sort of ISA, that kind of stuff. And I would put it into what currently I'm a big believer in VWRL, which is the Vanguard fund, and it's about 58% weighted towards USA, which is the S&P 500, and it's got like the 42% around the world, so you're diversified, and that's my sort of go-to. But anything that has some diversity can be a good fund. Look at the performance history of it, and just stick with it, right? And it's going to have bad days, going to have good days, but have that long-term mindset that in 30 years you should be. I mean, for me, I don't have an NHS pension, or a very small one, if that. So this is, in a way, is my pension. And again, like I said in the episode we did, it's my goal to FIRE, right? Financially independent, retire early. And I'm happy to say that my FIRE number is $1 million. When I have $1 million in my ISA, I can then draw out 4% a year, which is 40 grand, tax free, right? And it sounds like just 40 grand, Jazz, that it, but tax free. I'm quite, I don't drive a Ferrari or anything. I'm very fairly simple person. I don't have a very expensive dress sense or anything. I don't need that much money, so I'm confident that I'll get to a stage whereby I can work because I want to, not because I need to. Because I'm a good saver now, thanks to my wife, and I don't have a very lavish lifestyle, and therefore I'm able to save, invest, and hopefully one day I can FIRE.
Love it, Jazz. I love how you've got a tangible figure as well, because that's another thing that maybe, well, I mean, when you get into investing, if you have a hard limit on where you want to get to, then that's your goal. And then you'll know at that point that you've achieved something, rather than just continuing indefinitely. Because the whole point of it is that you're supposed to be financially free at some stage, and maybe having a tangible point is very, very, very helpful. So another good message there. Do you think you'll continue to do dentistry, Jazz, when you reach that point?
Yes, absolutely. Because I feel as though I want to be able to do, and I think everyone should. I think every dentist should aim for this, right? If you can make yourself in a financial position that you do dentistry because you want to and not because you need to. Wow. I mean, can you just imagine that you can go into work and you want to do this dentistry, and the awkward patient that you have in front of you who doesn't excite you, you can just be like, I'm not so interested. You don't have to take that treatment plan on, whatever. That's the holy grail, man.
It is. I love it, my friend. Jazz, thank you so much. This has been amazing today. Fire in the booth. I always knew there would be, from a man who's hit 100,000 views on his podcast. I've learned things today. I hopefully everyone else who's listening has too.
I hope it was valuable. I mean, I hope it wasn't too basic, and I hope people found value from that.
100%. This is the whole point. It's supposed to be an entry-level access to kind of investing for dentists, and also, as well as that, a little bit beyond the investing, just other things outside of dentistry. And I think we've hit the nail on the head today. Honestly, I had such a good time. Thank you so much, mate.
So did I. Thank you so much, James.
Jazz, you're a very busy man.
Okay,
I shall let you get off now. This has been an absolute pleasure. Hope you have a great day, my friend. See you later.
Thank you so much, man. It was great. But listen, before you go, James, right? Your internet upload speed is very slow. So, for example, mine has fully uploaded.